Ethan Cole had lived 10 years inside a question that never slept. Every morning he woke up with the same dull weight pressing against his chest, and every night he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the last moment he saw his daughter, Lila. She had been 8 years old then, small, bright, always asking questions about the world. The day she vanished, they had gone to a crowded shopping mall in Prague during winter sales. Lila had insisted on wearing her favorite pink wool jacket, the one with the silver buttons shaped like stars. Ethan could still see her spinning in front of a mirror, laughing. "Daddy, do I look like a pop star?" she had asked. He had chuckled and replied, "You look brighter than all of them." That was the last full sentence he ever heard from her as a child. Minutes later, she was gone. Security footage showed her walking into a sea of moving bodies, shoppers, tourists, flashing lights, and then the camera lost her. No scream, no struggle, just disappearance. For 10 years, Ethan replayed that footage until the colors burned into his memory. "Where did you go, baby?" he would whisper at night, gripping the paused screen. Police searches failed. No body was found. Friends told him to move on. Therapists told him to heal. But Ethan refused to bury a child without truth. "She's alive," he would say, voice shaking but firm. "I would feel it if she wasn't." Life did not stop moving just because Ethan's heart had. Bills still came. Work still demanded his attention. People still laughed in cafes, as if the world had never broken. He returned to his job as an architectural draftsman, though the lines he drew now felt empty. Colleagues spoke gently around him, careful not to mention children. His wife, Mara, had not survived the grief the same way he had. Where Ethan became obsessed with searching, Mara slowly dissolved into silence. She stopped opening the curtains, stopped answering calls. 6 months after Lila disappeared, a man named Victor Hale entered their lives, Mara's former employer from an art logistics firm. He came with sympathy, flowers, and a calm voice that seemed to steady Mara's shaking hands. "You cannot live inside pain forever," Victor told Ethan once, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "You must let the girl rest." Ethan remembered jerking away from his touch. "Don't say that. She's not dead." Victor's eyes had lingered too long before he replied softly, "Sometimes acceptance is mercy." Over time, Victor visited more often, bringing groceries, helping with paperwork, sitting with Mara during her worst nights. Ethan had been too consumed with private investigators and police reports to notice how deeply Victor embedded himself into their lives. By the time Ethan realized Victor had effectively moved in, Mara was already leaning on him emotionally. "He understands my grief," she told Ethan once. "He helps me breathe." Ethan didn't argue, not then. He thought they were all drowning in the same ocean. He never imagined one of them knew exactly where the shore was. The night everything changed began in Vienna's central train terminal, loud, electric, alive with motion. Ethan had traveled there chasing yet another lead from a missing persons forum. It was nearly midnight when he stood near platform 11, exhausted, preparing to leave. Announcements echoed overhead in multiple languages. Suitcases rolled. Neon lights flickered off polished floors. Then he heard it, faint but unmistakable. "Dad." The word cut through 10 years of silence like glass breaking underwater. Ethan froze. Slowly he turned. About 20 meters away stood a teenage girl, taller now, slender, wearing a charcoal coat. Her hair was longer, darker, but her eyes were his. Wide, amber brown, searching. His breath left him in a gasp. "Lila," he whispered, stepping forward like a man walking through a dream. The girl's lips parted slightly, uncertain. But before he could reach her, a man stepped beside her, protective, controlling. Ethan's stomach dropped. Victor Hale, older now, graying at the temples, but unmistakable. His arm rested lightly, yet possessively, on the girl's shoulder. "Stay close," Victor murmured to her. Ethan's voice shook as he approached. "Lila, it's me. It's Dad." The girl frowned, confusion clouding her face. She looked up at Victor. "You said he left." Ethan staggered back, as if struck. "Left? I never left you." Victor's expression remained calm, almost bored. "This isn't the place," he said coolly. "You're upsetting her." But Ethan's world had already exploded. His daughter was alive, and standing beside the one man he now feared most. They sat inside a quiet terminal cafe minutes later, tension suffocating the air. Ethan couldn't stop staring at the girl, memorizing every change, every resemblance. You're so grown," he whispered. The girl shifted uncomfortably. "My name is Lila Hale now," she said carefully. The surname hit Ethan like ice water. "Hale." His eyes snapped to Victor. "You gave her your name?" Victor sipped his coffee slowly. "I gave her stability." Ethan leaned forward, voice trembling. "Lila, sweetheart, listen to me. You were taken. I search for you every day." She frowned, glancing between them. "He told me you abandoned me in the mall, that you didn't want me anymore." Ethan's chair scraped loudly as he stood halfway. "That's a lie. I would never." Victor cut in smoothly. "Sit down, Ethan. Emotional outbursts won't help her." Ethan lowered himself, fists clenched. "Lila, do you remember your pink jacket? The star buttons? You made me call you Captain Sparkle that day." The girl's face flickered, a crack in the wall. I remember a jacket," she whispered. Victor's jaw tightened slightly. Ethan pressed gently. "You loved strawberry milkshakes. You hated math homework." Tears pooled in her eyes. "Stop," she murmured, overwhelmed. Victor placed a firm hand on the table. "Enough. You're confusing her with fantasies." But doubt had already entered her gaze, small, fragile, but alive. Ethan did not confront Victor again that night. He knew better than to explode without proof. Instead, he hired an elite private investigator, Adrian Voss, within 24 hours. "I want everything," Ethan said across the investigator's desk. "Passports, travel logs, adoption records, all of it." Weeks passed in agonizing suspense until Adrian returned with a thick file. "You were right not to trust him," Adrian said grimly. Inside were forged adoption papers signed 2 years after Lila's disappearance. Medical authorization forms bearing Victor's signature. Border-crossing records flagged under surveillance. "He moved her through 3 countries," Adrian explained. "Changed her identity at age 12. Ethan's hands shook as he turned pages. Then came the final blow, Mara's death report from 3 years prior. Cause: overdose. Authorizing guardian: Victor Hale. Ethan's voice cracked. "He controlled everything," Adrian nodded. "Interpol is interested. This goes beyond kidnapping, identity fraud, trafficking violations." A DNA test was arranged quietly using a café glass Lila had used. 2 weeks later, the result came back, 99.98% paternal match. Ethan stared at the document for a long time before whispering, "I'm coming for you, baby." Not with violence, but with truth. The reunion at the terminal had been chance. The next meeting would be war fought with evidence. And Victor Hale would finally have nowhere left to hide. The second meeting was not accidental. Ethan arranged it carefully, choosing a quiet riverside cafe in Vienna where conversations stayed private and exits were limited. He arrived early, file folder resting on the table like a silent weapon. His heart pounded with the same nervous energy he'd felt the day Lila was born. When Victor walked in with her, Ethan noticed the subtle control immediately, Victor's hand guiding her elbow, choosing her seat, answering the waiter before she could speak. Lila looked calmer than before but distant, as if she were watching her own life from behind glass. Ethan forced a gentle smile. "Thank you for coming." Victor leaned back casually. "You insisted. Let's make this quick." Ethan slid the folder forward. "This is why you're here." Victor didn't touch it. "I have nothing to discuss." Lila glanced between them. "What is this?" she asked softly. Ethan looked at her, voice tender. "Truth, sweetheart. Just truth." Victor's jaw flexed. "You're upsetting her again." Ethan's eyes hardened for the first time. "No, Victor. You did that 10 years ago." Ethan opened the folder slowly, laying out documents one by one like pieces of a shattered mirror. "This is your passport application for her," he said, tapping the paper. "Filed 4 years after she disappeared." Victor remained silent. Ethan placed another sheet down. Forged adoption papers. Signed without a court hearing. Lila leaned forward, confusion deepening. Adoption? Victor finally spoke. I rescued you. You needed stability. Ethan ignored him, sliding a photo across, a surveillance still from the mall. It showed Victor in the background minutes before Lila vanished. Lila's breath caught. You were there? Victor's calm cracked slightly. Coincidence. Ethan's voice sharpened. Interpol doesn't think so. Your travel records were flagged moving her under false identity. Lila looked at Victor, eyes searching. You told me you found me alone. Victor reached for her hand. I did. You were abandoned. Ethan slammed down the final document, the DNA test. She is my daughter. Proven. Silence swallowed the table. Lila's fingers trembled as she stared at the DNA report. 99%, she whispered. Her eyes slowly lifted to Ethan's face, studying him, tracing similarities she had never allowed herself to see. My eyes, she murmured. Ethan nodded gently. You got them from me. She looked back at Victor, panic rising. Why would you lie? Victor's voice dropped into a controlled hush. Because he would have ruined your life. He couldn't protect you. Ethan leaned forward, anger finally surfacing. You mean like you did? Kidnapping her? Erasing her name? Victor's expression hardened. I gave her everything. You stole everything, Ethan shot back. Lila pushed her chair slightly away from Victor, the first physical distance she'd ever created. Did you take me? She asked, voice barely audible. Victor didn't answer immediately, and in that silence, truth began speaking louder than words. Memories started surfacing in fragments, not clear images, but feelings. Lila pressed her fingers to her temple. I remember crying in a car, she whispered. I asked for my dad. Ethan's breath caught. Victor stood abruptly. We're leaving. Lila didn't move. No, wait. Tears filled her eyes as more flashes came. A pink jacket. I dropped my milkshake. I was scared. Ethan's voice softened. You were looking for the restroom. I was right behind you. She gasped, covering her mouth. Victor's tone sharpened. He's planting memories. But Lila shook her head slowly. No, these feel real. She looked up at Victor, betrayal dawning. You said no one came for me. Ethan's voice broke. I never stopped coming. That sentence shattered something inside her. Victor tried one last grasp at control. He crouched beside her chair. Lila, listen to me. I raised you. I protected you. She looked at him through tears. From who? He hesitated. She whispered. From my own father? Ethan remained still, letting her choose freely. Victor's voice lowered dangerously. If you go with him, everything you know disappears. Lila's reply came fragile but firm. It already has. She stood slowly, legs shaking. The cafe felt silent around them. Victor reached for her arm, but she stepped back. That small movement felt louder than any scream. Ethan rose, but didn't touch her yet. He remembered she was still fragile, still processing. You don't have to decide anything today, he said gently. I just want you safe. She studied him, searching for anger, blame, resentment. Instead, she found patience. Why aren't you yelling? She asked. Ethan swallowed emotion. Because I lost enough years. I won't lose more to anger. Her lips trembled. I don't know how to be your daughter anymore. Ethan's eyes filled. Then we'll learn again. Slowly. Victor scoffed. Sentimental nonsense. But his voice no longer carried authority, only desperation. Police entered quietly moments later, alerted earlier by Ethan and Interpol coordination. 2 officers approached Victor. Mr. Hale, we need you to come with us regarding identity fraud and international child abduction. Victor stood frozen. This is absurd. One officer replied calmly, You can explain at the station. Lila watched as they placed a hand on his shoulder. For the first time, he looked small. Not powerful. Not protective. Just a man being taken away. Lila, he said urgently, tell them I saved you. She didn't answer. She only watched, silent tears falling, as he was escorted out of her life the same way he had entered it, abruptly. The cafe felt different after he left, lighter, yet heavy with unspoken years. Lila sat back down slowly. Ethan remained standing, unsure, afraid to move too fast. Is he going to prison? She asked. There will be an investigation, Ethan said carefully. She nodded faintly, absorbing it. Minutes passed before she whispered, Did she look for me too? Ethan's face softened with grief. Every day, until she couldn't fight anymore. Lila's tears returned. I want to see where I came from, she said quietly. Ethan's breath hitched. You mean home? She gave a small nod. They walked out of the cafe, together, into the cold Vienna evening. For a moment, they simply stood side by side, unsure of the space between them. Then, hesitantly, Lila reached for his hand, not like a child, but like someone testing a bridge. Ethan closed his fingers around hers carefully, as if holding something sacred. Neither spoke. Words felt too small. Streetlights reflected in her tears as she whispered, I'm scared. Ethan squeezed gently.
So am I.
But we'll be scared together. She gave the faintest smile, the first one he'd seen since she was 8. On the flight home weeks later, Lila sat by the window while Ethan watched her from the aisle seat, memorizing her all over again. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way she frowned when thinking. 10 years had been stolen, but not erased. Healing would take time. Trust would grow slowly. But she was here, alive, beside him, coming home. As the plane lifted above the clouds, she turned to him and asked softly, Dad, will you tell me stories about when I was little? Ethan's voice broke with quiet joy. I'll tell you everything. She rested her head gently on his shoulder. Unfamiliar, but right. Outside, the sky stretched endless and bright, like a future finally returned to them. And Ethan made a silent promise. No more lost years, no more stolen names. Only love, patience, and the long journey of being father and daughter again. Home did not feel like home to Lila on the first day. It felt like stepping into someone else's memories. The house in Prague looked smaller than she expected, quieter too. Ethan unlocked the door slowly, almost ceremonially, as if reopening a time capsule. You grew up here, he said softly. Lila stepped inside, her eyes scanning the living room, the faded blue couch, the tall bookshelf, the framed photographs lining the wall. She walked closer to one frame and froze. It was a picture of her at age 7, missing front teeth, sitting on Ethan's shoulders at a summer fair. Her fingers lifted shakily to the glass. I remember this day, she whispered. Ethan smiled gently behind her. You made me ride the Ferris wheel 3 times even though I'm afraid of heights. She let out a small, surprised laugh, the sound unfamiliar but warm. They moved through the house slowly. Her old bedroom door creaked open to reveal a preserved space, star-patterned curtains, childhood drawings, a dusty stuffed rabbit on the bed. Lila stepped in like an archaeologist uncovering her own life. You kept everything? She asked. Ethan nodded. I didn't know if you'd come back, but I needed you to have somewhere to return to. She sat on the bed, clutching the stuffed rabbit. His name is Orbit, she murmured suddenly. Ethan's eyes widened. You remembered. Tears slipped down her cheeks, but this time they carried something new, belonging. She looked up at him, hesitantly. Dad, will it hurt forever? Missing those years. Ethan sat beside her, choosing his words carefully. Some days it will. But we'll make new years too. And they'll matter just as much. She leaned into his shoulder. Not uncertain this time, but seeking comfort she was finally allowing herself to feel. Months passed, not perfectly, but honestly. Healing came in quiet layers. Therapy sessions, shared dinners, long walks where Lila asked questions about her childhood and Ethan answered every one, no matter how painful. Some nights she woke from nightmares, memories clashing with lies she'd been told. Ethan would sit beside her bed until she fell asleep again, just like he used to when thunderstorms scared her. One evening in early spring, they returned to the Prague Mall, the place where everything had been broken. Lila stood at the entrance, gripping Ethan's hand tightly. I want to face it, she said. They walked the same corridors, now calmer, less crowded. When they reached the exact spot from the security footage, she stopped. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. This is where I lost you, she whispered. Ethan shook his head gently.
No.
This is where someone took you. I never let you go. She turned and wrapped her arms around him fully, the first unguarded embrace since her return. You found me again, she said into his chest. Ethan closed his eyes, holding her as if anchoring her to the world. I always would. Above them, the mall lights glowed softly, no longer harsh, no longer haunted.
Just a place.
Just a memory. As they walked out together into the evening air, side by side, it no longer felt like the end of a tragedy, but the beginning of a life they had fought, across 10 stolen years, to reclaim.